The Africa Water Sanitation Week was organized across sub-teams. We will now take reports from the Africa Water Week 8 sub-teams, 4 Africa Sun 6 sub-teams, and 1 cross-cutting sub-teams. We will now go to the sub-team reports. Let's hear from Mr. Kariuki Mugo. So let's hear from Mr. Mugo Kariuki.
Presentation.
Sorry, I can't be able to communicate. Yvonne Magawa will do it on my behalf.
She's not ready yet. Maybe we can hear from Sadir Pile.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Kitch, how are you doing?
Can we hear from Sadir?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
All right,
you're well.
so Mugo is on. Let's hear from Mugo Kariuki.
Sorry, it's Yvonne Magawa who is making the presentation on behalf of the thematic session.
All right. All right, so let's hear from Sadir Pile.
Hi, Kitch. Can you guys hear me now? Kitch?
Please come back again. We didn't hear you last time. Yes, you're most welcome. Please go ahead and make your presentation.
Hi, everyone. So what we did was we focused on the human capacity aspect. And so we had a poll. So it was a session run between USAID and myself. We actually ran a poll through the system just to get some feedback on what the actual gaps are. And so through the discussions with our colleagues from Nigeria, from Ghana and South Africa and various parts, one of the things we realized that there is a need for identification of different types of gaps. What are the actual gaps? Do people know what are the gaps are? You know, things looking at job descriptions for sanitation workers, those things came all important because once you don't have that initial foundation, it's hard to actually know how to build on the capacity for that. So we gave different examples and how you can also look and align the budget to, you know, if the rest of the content can do some type of skills gap and critical needs gap. So that's the summary, a very brief summary of our session. I hope that's short and sweet enough for you guys. So I gave the quick overview. I think we can move on next to the next.
Pile for that presentation. Can we go back to Mugo Kariuki and Yvonne Magawa of Esawas? Otherwise, we can move to Dedo Mate Kojo for the next presentation.
Thank you very much, Kitch. Good afternoon, everyone. I support, can you hear me? Kitch, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm presenting for the sub-team 3, fecal sludge management, green economy, and climate change. The lead conveners were WaterAid and USAID. The session discussed fecal sludge management as the key to accelerating sanitation uptake across the continent using innovative technologies and the citywide inclusive sanitation model. It also underscored the role of climate resilient sanitation infrastructure and service provision in reaching the SDG target for 2030. Sessions under the sub-theme include 1, accelerating the convergence on sanitation and climate action. 2, contribution to action research on the impact of climate change on rural sanitation in Goma province. And 3, the value chain of actors for better sanitation, a winning bet for Burkina Faso. So here are our recommendations. We recognize that there is still a need for better understanding and communicating the interlinkage of climate adaptation and mitigation and sanitation. There are documented strong linkages between sanitation and the other SDGs, which should be capitalized on for planning and financing of the sector. We also recognize that current investments in non-resilient infrastructure and service provision puts past and future investments at risk. It will not help attain the targets set by 2030. To accelerate, therefore, progress towards the SDGs and to meet our obligations under the nationally determined contributions, we need to plan for sanitation systems that are both resilient to the effects of climate change, as well as having a low emissions profile. Improving wastewater and fecal sludge management and treatment processes are very critical to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and contribute to combating the effects that climate change has on our countries and our citizens in Africa and worldwide. Hence, low carbon infrastructure and the potential and need for climate mitigation should be integrated into our sanitation policies in all countries. To be able to withstand future climate events and stresses, we need to include climate resilient aspects into sanitation planning and financing, and we need to strengthen the much needed intersectoral coordination with other development actors. We should increase implementation efforts regarding investment in the sanitation value chain. So investment in building treatment plants to enhance the value of sanitation byproducts through agriculture, biogas, energy, etc. And we propose that these treatment plants can and should be decentralized and managed at community and district levels, and should be part of the development planning in urban housing. And an indigenous solution is needed to improve sanitation, enhance the ownership of the systems and outcomes. Citizen mobilization and engagement, consultation in the planning and management of sanitation systems is a must. There is also the need to include media as a strategic partner and asset to support SDG efforts. There's an opportunity for peer learning, capacity building, and knowledge sharing in sanitation planning across the continent to contribute significantly to the achievement of SDG 6. There is also an opportunity to capitalize on the emerging federation of sanitation actors to scale up and to ensure effective monitoring and control of the system to support member states' commitments to adaptation, mitigation of the impact of climate change. We recognize that the lack of data and evidence on climate mitigation and sanitation leads to underfinancing of resilient sanitation systems. We must therefore invest in more research to find technological options that are resilient to climate change while being sustainable and affordable. We acknowledge also that poor management of fecal sludge can have a disastrous impact on the health of the populations, especially the poorest and more vulnerable groups. The negative impacts of climate change, compounded with the lack of or inadequate infrastructure for FSM, is posing an environmental and health threat in both rural and urban settings. We need, therefore, to prioritize climate-sensitive WASH and especially provide technological support to the poorest communities to access quality and sustainable sanitation services. This calls for a comprehensive and qualitative management of the full sanitation chain from collection, transportation, storage, transformation, and use. While flooding and droughts are common hazards in Africa, in a context defined by poor and lack of sanitation facilities, we call upon our governments to, 1, invest in climate-proofed sanitation facilities as a part of Green Cities Initiative, and 2, ensure effective coordination of all sanitation stakeholders towards climate-proof sanitation service delivery. We would like to end our summary with a quote from the Honorable Halidou Sanfo, who is the president of the Burkina Faso chapter of the African Network of Parliamentarians for Drinking Water, Hygiene and Sanitation for Africa. And I quote, "African parliamentarians must really play their role as members of parliament by properly challenging the executive on its responsibilities and commitments to guarantee safe drinking water and decent and adequate sanitation for all. It is also to fight mercilessly to put the water and sanitation sector at the heart of all the priorities, to give it the necessary means. There is no point in passing laws if they do not have an impact on people's lives. That is the purpose of a parliament," unquote. Thank you very much. Kitch and Maimuna, back to you.
Many thanks, Dedo. Let's hear now from our sister, Elizabeth Wamera. Elizabeth, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Do I proceed? I'm ready. Do I proceed? Give me a sign.
Please do, Elizabeth.
Thank you. So I'll be presenting on the behalf of Subtheme 4, which was titled Improving Hygiene in Africa, Building on the Momentum of COVID-Era Hand Hygiene. We had 7 sessions. We had various conveners on this. We had UNICEF, WaterRed, the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, UNFPA, several governments, and you also had the regional body SADC. I'll start with a quote from Tunisia. One of the presenters said, "Prevention remains the most powerful weapon to fight disease and keep people healthy." So based on that, I'll go straight into what we talked about. So first and foremost, we agreed that we need to consider the health impacts of hygiene beyond COVID-19 pandemic, because there's so much to think about and to focus on. And in this conference, there were 2 specific aspects of hygiene that were presented. That was on hand hygiene and menstrual hygiene and health. Some of the key issues that came up were that there is a clear need to disaggregate sanitation and hygiene to provide effective support to hygiene. Secondly, monitoring remains a persistent challenge in advancing hygiene. So then it becomes, it is lost in all the documentation, and it's not well measured. We also agreed that the private sector has an increasingly important role in accelerating hygiene, and we need to find better ways to engage with the private sector. And we had various conversations, and we had a very good interjection from the government of South Africa on how they are thinking of institutionalizing working with the private sector. We also came up with an agreement that it's more efficient to have cross-sector coordination with key stakeholders to encourage innovation. And integrating hygiene into other sectors also provides an opportunity for rapid scale-up and opportunities also in consolidating financing for hygiene. Because we acknowledge the fact that different organizations, different ministries are doing bits and pieces of either hand hygiene or menstrual health. But if these are brought together, then we have a consolidated approach. Then we are able to actually look at how much is being invested in the various things and how we can actually advocate for more. And also just to have a collaborative working together as opposed to working in silos. The issue of youth engagement also was presented. And it was very clear that when it comes to issues of menstrual health and hygiene, we look at, we are always targeting the youth, the young people, the girls, the adolescent girls and the young activists, but how often do we bring them around the table to engage them and have these various conversations? So bringing them up is very critical, bringing them into the conversation is very critical. But most importantly is what kind of approaches are we using? Are we using the other approaches that we use to speak to adults and engage, or we have to find different ways to bring them onto the table? Of course, we wouldn't have continued with the conversation if the issue of operation and maintenance did not come up. When it comes to hygiene, there's the issue of good supply of water, technologies, and of course, hygiene product supplies. How do we deal with this? It remains a challenge, and we need to have further conversations and how to encourage people to think through this as they come up with programs and interventions in the different countries in Africa. Integrating hygiene promotion with routine vaccination was something that was also mentioned, which was quite interesting because we know that we already have scheduled programs for vaccination. Is it possible that when we have our scheduled programs for vaccination that are already set out with government, that the issue of hygiene promotion is also integrated into this routine vaccination? Of course, the issue of gender and the issue of vulnerability. These are aspects that have to be taken into account to better reach the targets for the various interventions that we are carrying out, because then we have different needs at different times in the life cycle. We would not have ended our sessions and conversations without talking about the issue of climate change. This is important to consider in addressing the issues of resilience, mitigation, and adaptation, because it also heavily affects the behavior of each and every household, every school, every public place in relation to hygiene. So we realized that despite having 7 sessions and having a wrap-up session early this morning, there's still so much to be discussed within the hygiene space. And we agreed that we need to have further conversations. We need to have more elaborate engagements. And we agreed as a group that submitted various aspects of hygiene in this conference that we need to have an active platform whereby hygiene issues need to be discussed and clear steps set out, especially like for now, the most important one that we think needs we have a platform that we need to actually take advantage of is the World Water Forum that is coming up in March in 2022. That we need to have the space for hygiene to be discussed. So we have agreed in this conference that we'll have hygiene advocates having various discussions on a community of practice platform that will be launched. This will be supported by the Knowledge Hub at the AMCAO Secretariat. And that is my submission. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that presentation. Now we invite Neno Kukurich to make the sub-team presentation. Neno, are you ready?
Yes, I'm around. Thank you for this invitation. And let me just in a few minutes report to you on findings from sub-team 1, which was on transboundary water management for cooperation and shared development. There were a lot of sessions, there were a lot of interesting presentations and very fruitful discussions, and it was quite a challenge to put several really distinct conclusions. So we made two versions, a long version which we will share later on, and a short one with the real statements, and I will just use a few words for them and maybe dwell a little bit longer on few of them. So to start with, the transboundary water cooperation is essential for effectively managing and sustainable developing transboundary waters and has multiple benefits. Point. Inclusive basin organizations can be agents for peace and promote regional integration, stability, and sustainable development. And this is quite interesting because in Africa, as we know, only 2 countries have all their share waters covered by operational agreements, about 11 for surface water and 3 for groundwater. So that's far from sufficient. Therefore, we must build more inclusive political arrangements, including basin organizations, to strengthen transboundary water cooperation. Further, keep fostering cooperation among aquifer states. Climate change and human impact on groundwater resources do not stop at administrative borders. You don't see it, groundwater is flowing. So we see that surface water availability is decreasing and that reliance on and pressure on groundwater is increasing. On the other hand, we still don't know sufficient about especially state of groundwater resources, and we do not manage our aquifers in Africa and the other parts of the world well enough. So in Africa, there are more than 70 transboundary aquifers, and they underlie 40% of the continent, and 1/3 of population lives actually on these aquifers. So if you look globally, then among large aquifers under stress, 6 of them are transboundary, and well, some of them in Africa, and some of them even non-renewable, such as Nubia and Northwest Sahara. So it is very important to place transboundary aquifers in context of the relevant societal and environmental problems to address them properly. Further, equally important, using the water, energy, food nexus for transboundary waters can help reconciling sectoral water demands. I could elaborate on that a lot, but I think it's very clear. Effective legal and institutional frameworks, including the UN Global Water Conventions, regional protocols, and basin-level agreements are crucial for effective management of transboundary water resources. Just to mention example of water convention, which really operates as a catalyst for cooperation and offers a global legal and institutional framework to assist in these efforts. Further, participative approach is needed in transboundary water management, including different stakeholders such as youth, women, private sector, local and regional governmental institutions, etc. Effective transboundary cooperation requires joint monitoring and assessment data exchange, and harmonization, which is often still a challenge in shared bases. And I could say it's especially challenged when it comes to groundwater. But then, you know, we need to use all kinds of tools and resources like satellite images, remote sensing can really help a lot. And share knowledge and lesson learned, and really try to cooperate in a transparent way. I have only one more conclusion, and last but certainly not least, and it's about financing. And saying simply that financing is important to support transboundary water cooperation. Well, domestic budgetary resources of member states' contributions are and should be the primary financial funding source. However, financial agreements, especially for river basin organizations, continue to be challenged in Africa and should be ideally included in transboundary agreements. Having both hard and soft transboundary legal and institutional arrangements, so we are talking about context here in place, helps to mitigate the risks and ensure favorable investment conditions. These are the main conclusions of the sub-team 1. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Neno. So let's hear from Raymond Brandfurer.
Yes, thank you for your kind introduction. I really appreciate to be the rapporteur for sub-theme 2 on the sub-theme enhancing water security through sustainable management of groundwater resources. We had in total 9 sessions in that sub-theme, and the sessions were from the different disciplines and from a local, national, and regional scale. And we had also very different perspectives. And this morning we agreed in the rapporteur session on a few key messages, which I might display here on this screen. So we have in total 6 key messages, and as you see, the title of that theme is Enhancing Water Security through Sustainable Management of Groundwater Resources. So the message and the answer is to achieve equitable water security. A process is needed to move forward by unlocking groundwater resources for socio-economic development and better livelihoods. Message 2. And this is derived finally from a report in 2018 from IWM development report, where AMCAO did this investigation on the African continent. It came out that groundwater management capacity on the African continent lags far behind the management capacity of surface water and to the global average in groundwater capacity, management capacity. So upper GROP programmatic approach is the answer on the AMCAO's minister request in Gabon 2018 to catch up quickly. Upper GROP, the AMCAO Pan-African Groundwater Program, so that was finally launched in 2020 in Kampala. And so it took 2 years to develop such a programmatic approach. And now there is a need for financial investments, capacity, and an enabling environment. Key message 3 is that the African Water Week, or African Water and Sanitation Week correctly, is an important milestone to set out Upper GROP's programmatic approach. Countries have different starting points of groundwater management capacity. This is reflected in Upper GROP programmatic pathways with different ways in which countries may move forward to improve policy and practices and thus unlock the potential of groundwater for economic development and better livelihoods. The World Water Forum 9 in Dakar next year will be of significant importance for upscaling in AMCAO member states. Key message 4 is, we have seen within this week that much knowledge on groundwater was demonstrated in 9 or 10 sessions within subteam 2, but we have also seen many sessions within subteam 1 and 3, which also were about groundwater. Groundwater played a quite important role. So there's a need to most effectively marshal them to improve policy and practice. Key message 5. Groundwater is a key resource to supply Africa's population with water and food for a healthy and prosperous life. On the other hand, groundwater is at risk in many places, facing threats of pollution from urbanization, industrial development, agriculture and mining activities, and from poor sanitation practices and over-exploitation. And the last key message is institutional and governance capacity, knowledge and monitoring, and cross-sectoral collaboration need to strengthen. The constitutional human rights to water and food are to be prioritized. Sustainable groundwater development and clean energy use go hand in hand for resilience and socio-economic transformation in Africa. The effective regulation and protection of aquifers need to be incorporated explicitly into sectoral, national, and regional development and climate change adaptation strategies. So thank you for that. So I think the setup of the AMCAO's Pan-African groundwater programmatic approach was very central to this sub-theme. And yeah, the next important milestone after the African Water Week will be the World Water Forum. We are really looking forward for further development. Thank you so much for now. And
thank you to
you both.
Ramon Benfura for your presentation. We will now go to Kirsty Upton for the sub-theme report. Kirsty, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Let me just share my screen for you.
Good.
Okay. Hopefully you're able to see that slide. Thank you for the invitation to present the wrap-up of subsession 3 in the Africa Water Week, which was on building Africa's resilience to climate change and related disasters. It was reconvened by AMCAO and co-convened by IMI and BGS. And we had 7 sessions across the sub-theme looking at different aspects of water and water management and how that relates to climate resilience. So some of the key messages that were coming from sub-theme 3. The recently published IPCC report highlights that climate change will have variable but significant impacts on water and water-related systems in Africa, and that managing water security is one of the top priorities for climate change adaptation and resilience. Recommendations for adapting effectively to climate change in Africa to support climate smart cities, communities and agriculture are wide-ranging and include, for example, better weather services, preparedness planning, integrated water storage management across multiple scales. Groundwater presents a significant opportunity for climate adaptation and resilience and will be increasingly relied on in a changing climate with more extreme weather and more uncertain water availability. So managing groundwater resources for long-term sustainability, as well as short-term drought relief, will help secure long-term deep resilience. The solutions to climate change need to prioritise gender and social inclusion, as it's often the more vulnerable populations that are hit the hardest. So across the 7 sessions, we've pulled out some of the key conclusions, which really highlighted both the risks, but also some of the opportunities for climate change resilience and adaptation. So some of the key risks of climate change include an increase in water-related hazards such as landslides, flood and drought, and sea level rise, which can have catastrophic outcomes, but also risks to water quality, such as groundwater salinity related to rising sea levels, overexploitation, and pollution. So in response to some of those risks, we saw lots of opportunities for climate change resilience and adaptation. As mentioned already, groundwater presents a key opportunity. Groundwater resources in many environments are naturally resilient to climate change and have the potential to support climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. MAR and other integrated water storage solutions are already being effectively implemented in several contexts as part of climate adaptation strategies, as for example we see in Windhoek. And there are low-cost options that could be easily transferable elsewhere. And there are significant opportunities for novel data approaches and digital innovations to help support resilience and adaptation efforts. So some of the key recommendations to member states coming from sub-theme 3 are to trigger action and investment in capacity, in data, information, and the tools needed to support climate resilience and adaptation efforts at a national and subnational level. This might include, for example, groundwater and aquifer resource assessment and management, planning and implementation of MAR, vulnerability and multi-hazard risk assessments and early warning systems. To support farmers, businesses and other water users to adopt climate smart approaches. For example, creating the enabling environment, policy and finance to support solar pumping by small-scale farmers for irrigation, or renewable energy and nature-based solutions for other water sector requirements. To promote basin-level approaches to water management that consider conjunctive use and management of surface water, groundwater, and other water, such as grey water and saline water. To support knowledge sharing and the development of policy and guidelines for best practice. And finally, to trigger multi-stakeholder, collaborative, and inclusive approaches to climate change adaptation at all levels within an overarching multi-sectoral governance framework. I'd just like to finish by thanking all of the session leads and conveners that contributed to sub-theme 3. We look forward to taking these discussions forward in the run-up to the World Water Forum in Dakar next year. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Kirsty. Let's hear now from Kidane Mariam Jambere.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, to both.
Thank you very much. So I'll be sharing what came out of sub-team number 4, which is addressing water and sanitation sector enablers and drivers, which covers policy, capacity development, knowledge, and financing. So I am reporting on behalf of sub-team session conveners. So we had 11 sessions under sub-team number 4. One is start around 4 sessions around mobilizing water investment in Africa. For example, the first session was around bridging the water investment gap in Africa through mobilizing water investment, and also the Continental Africa Water Investment Program. And then that investment, the second session was around how the WEF Nexus approach could actually facilitate water investment in water and also other sectors. And the third one is ensuring gender equality in water security and climate resilience development in Africa. And then the fourth one is the need for the right policies and strategies to support water investment in Africa. And actually the water policy and strategy document of Africa Development Bank was launched during that session. So 4 sessions were around how to mobilize, facilitate, accelerate water investment in the African continent. Then we had 3 sessions focusing around capacity and knowledge. One is around water education, mainly focusing around educating children and youth as we are planning to develop a water sensitive generation in the future. Then another session was on, again, engaging youth in science and knowledge so that it can actually contribute towards generating new knowledge and technologies as part of water supply and sanitation programs. The third session under capacity and knowledge is how to close knowledge gap in Africa. So combining formal training programs, but also supported with citizen science program where citizens will be engaged in research, data collection, and analysis. Then we had also 2 sessions around accountability and water integrity. One is including financing accountability and recognizing the role of civil society in establishing a proper accountability system in the water and sanitation sector. Another one is water integrity. There was the update report in water integrity, which was shared during the session by way of improving the service delivery in water and sanitation sector in Africa. Then the last 2 were particularly around addressing water challenges in the urban centers. We have urban on-site water and sanitation systems, and also what they call it, the city blueprint framework, trying to address or establish cities that are actually water-wise or climate resilient cities. So we had 11 sessions contributed to the different enablers and drivers of water security and human health. Then let me just move to what came in terms of our recommendations, key messages. So we have about 6 messages that came out of the different sessions. The first one is mobilizing water investment in Africa through the increasing political leadership in Africa, through urgently promoting the establishment of an international high-level panel for water investment in Africa, and also through strengthening local capacity to track gaps and barriers to water investment through what we call it the water investment scorecard system. And all of this is definitely related to part of implementation of the Continental Africa Water Investment Program. So the first message recommendation is how to mobilize water investment in Africa. Second message is to ensure that gender inequality issues are addressed systematically at different levels, individual power relations and structures. And then the good practices and lessons from some countries in Africa need to be scaled up towards gender equality in water security and climate resilience building. So recommendation number 2 around ensuring gender equality is part of our service delivery, water and climate resilience building. Recommendation number 3 is strengthening Africa's capacity, including educating youth and children, investing in research to generate and adapt technologies and knowledge so that it will also support our program in water and sanitation. Recommendation number 4 is to establish national and sub-regional frameworks to promote the water energy food nexus approach in Africa, and also facilitate learnings based on the experience such as from the SADC region and also other initiatives in the continent. Number 5 is strengthening systems for improving accountability and integrity in the water and sanitation sector, and also recognizing the role and work collaboratively with the various stakeholders such as civil society. And the last one is to develop and implement programs to address water and sanitation and environmental challenges around African urban centers. So these are in terms of a summarized version of our recommendation and outcomes from the different sessions, from 11 sessions under sub-thematic number 4. So we'd like to thank GWP being the main convener of September thematic number 4. Would like to really thank to the various organizers, conveners of the different sessions, 11 already listed there. We want to appreciate for their contribution and convening the different sessions. Thank you very much. Back to you, Teach.
Action.
Many thanks, Kidane. Let's hear now from Nelson Gumonda.
Thank you, Maimuna and Keach, for this opportunity. I'll be making a presentation on behalf of the African Women Bank, especially colleagues at the bank. And this is a presentation for the cross-cutting sub-theme, which was focusing on issues to do with securing innovative financing for water, sanitation, and hygiene in Africa, of course, taking into account the challenging times that we are in. The sessions under this sub-theme were convened by a number of other partners as well, and we had a total of 7 sessions. So we had the African Bank convener session focusing on resource mobilization and accountability for resource use for rural wash. We also had the Kampala Capital City Authority convener session in conjunction with the Water for People in Uganda, focusing on financing sanitation improvement in low-income communities. And they also focused on sharing some experiences, challenges, and opportunities. We had also another session convened by the African Bank focusing on securing innovative financing for sanitation and hygiene. This basically mirrors the cross-cutting sub-theme. And the focus was mainly around some successes and stories from the Africa region. Then we had WaterAid convening a very interesting session as well on driving national progress on hand hygiene through diverse financing. We had UNICEF convening a session focusing on leveraging private investments for sanitation. And this focused on some experiences within the West and Central Africa region, but of course, focusing on the revolving fund that is for the West and Central Africa. We had World Vision convener session on sustainability of piped water system case of community level piped water insurance schemes. And then we had WaterAid again convener session on financing toolkit to transform approaches to sanitation provision, investments, and partnership for inclusive wash. We have had quite a lot of input in the summary that I'm sharing at this particular moment from our colleagues from all the co-conveners. And I'd like to acknowledge the support of Julian from UNICEF, Dawok Williams from WaterAid, Annie Sosa from WaterAid. We also had Nick, who is a consultant, and also Lisha. But from the bank, I'd like to specifically acknowledge the support of Osenu Kenny, who helped quite a lot in putting up this particular sub-theme. The key messages, we have about 5 of them, which try to summarize most of the things that we really looked at, or most of the issues that we looked at under this particular sub-theme. The first one focuses at creating and strengthening incentives, or let's say concession, for the private sector entry into the wash sector. We thought that it's important for our governments and all players within the sector to learn from promising examples already from wash that are being tried in several countries, and also outside the wash sector, for example, the agro-allied sector. And as we do that, we also want to ensure that there is systematic coordination and regulation of the private sector business operations within the wash sector. And this is what we desire our governments especially to try and encourage. Secondly, we would like to encourage governments and partners to institute specific policy targets, of course, with the dedicated budget lines for hygiene and sanitation. Over time, I think we have noted that there is quite a lot of resources just going into this sector, but sometimes it's difficult to track how much is being allocated for hygiene, how much is being allocated for sanitation. So for this reason, we would like to ensure that we institute specific policy targets and dedicated budget lines, and then to enable resource mobilization from the private and public sector as well. Number three, we are saying we need to strengthen monitoring systems, and if our governments can work on that, it would be really great. And ensure, of course, data disaggregation to improve accountability for sanitation and hygiene. And of course, it will also ensure that it's easy for us to track investments to sanitation and the cross-sectoral collaboration. Number four, we are saying we need to explore, test and implement, as well as document some innovating financing mechanisms. These could include blending finance mechanisms, and as well as micro credit or microfinance models as well, and other models. And then we need to also ensure that we are sharing knowledge and the learnings to ensure that we can scale up most of these operations as well. Then lastly, but not least on this case, we are saying that sanitation and hygiene is linked to all the 17 SDGs. And of course, also has synergies with about 130 targets of 169 targets. For this reason, we would like to encourage governments to use this opportunity to leverage investments from other sectors and the other financing windows, especially climate finance, as we're coming from COP26. That's one of the areas that we thought that we need also to focus on. During this particular sub-theme, we had also summaries for each and every sessions, which I'll not go through again, but these are just the specific sessions summaries that we have logged into our system so far. And we hope that the African Research Council on Water will make necessary arrangements to share this. But if it's about the messages, the 5 messages, here we are. These are the 5 messages. Thank you so much again. And I would like to thank those that took part in convening different sessions under the cross-cutting sub-theme at the Africa Water and Sanitation Week. Many thanks again, and back to you, Maimuna and Kish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nelson Gomonda, for your presentation. Now we go back to Mr. Mugo Kariki of the Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor. Mugo, are you ready?
Yes, Kitch. Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
I can hear you clearly.
I'm sorry for the technical hitch, but nevertheless, here we are. I'm here to present a sub-theme 1 of Africa Sun. Without much ado, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, I will give a brief summary on the sub-theme on inclusive policy and strategy for accelerating sanitation and hygiene improvement in Africa. This session was co-convened by ESAWAS, the Regulators Association for Eastern and Southern Africa, Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor, WASAP, and UNICEF. The sub-theme had 12 sessions with the objective to discuss opportunities and challenges for the development of inclusive sanitation policies and strategies for accelerated action using the ASPG and other approaches. The sub-theme offered a platform for partners and sector stakeholders to dialogue for accelerated action by sharing experiences, knowledge, and learning on inclusive sanitation and hygiene service delivery across the African continent. Our collective summary of the issues that we discussed is as follows. Please allow me to try and share the screen. Not sure whether this is going to work for me. Sorry, I will have to read. So we have 5 key recommendations from a sub-theme. The first one is that high-level political will and leadership is the bedrock and catalyst to improve sanitation services. All governments at all levels, national, subnational, and local level, should take the lead for policy formulation, implementation, and particularly for mobilizing resources and strengthening accountability, evidence, and to show that the public sector leaders can be pioneers and can set examples for others to follow. Our second recommendation was that increased investment to sanitation remains a key risk, not just for infrastructure, but also to support research and knowledge creation to inform policy and strategies. Our recommendation number 3 is about data. That data is fundamental and underpins service provision decisions on policies and regulation. Therefore, there is need for urgent investment in data management systems that can inform continental agendas. Our recommendation number 4 is about collaboration to strengthen synergies of all actors. We can no longer work in silos. Collaboration must exist from the local level to subnational, national, regional, and continental wide. There is need to develop harmonization and coordination mechanisms that will facilitate and transfer scalability of approaches and initiatives. And finally, there is need to promote competition for the purpose of raising advocacy for replication of working approaches. This is to institute an African Water and Sanitation Award. We think that's a good suggestion that would recognize progressive efforts by ministries, local governments, regulators, and service providers. In summary, this session was mostly proposing that we need to collaborate at continental level and not working in silos anymore, and also looking at investing in all sectors of water, sanitation, and hygiene without working with government, working with civil society, and working with other players in the sector. Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, Mr. Mugo Kariuki. And now, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to invite the chair of the Technical Advisory Committee of the African Ministers' Council on Water, Mr. Christopher Monikasu, to present the summary of the country dialogues that took place during this meeting. Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kichi. Good afternoon, colleagues. First and foremost, my apologies for coming late. I had some challenges in connection, but allow me first to observe the protocol as already established, and I'll be presenting on the outcomes and recommendation from the Africa Sun Conference Dialogue, country dialogue sessions that involved countries like Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Kenya, Namibia, Sudan, Egypt, Eswatini, Malawi, Republic of South Africa, Gambia, Cameroon, Rwanda, Central African Republic, Angola, and Zambia, respectively. Can I humbly ask Emmanuel to share the screen? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. As a way of introduction, the country session, dialogue session of the Africa Sun 6 conference is a process rather than an event as it's designed as a structured peer knowledge exchange forum. Each step of the process reflects on the bottlenecks to progress on INGO commitments and SDG, sanitation and hygiene targets. The process determines a course of action to unblock these bottlenecks, whether this be at the level of the technocrats, the national working group members, or high-level sanitation and hygiene decision makers. Mixed regional country delegation connect with peers, share knowledge and innovation, and plan defined action to accelerate progress in sanitation and hygiene in their respective countries. Now, the objectives of the country dialogue sessions. The overall objective being to reach a consensus or general consensus on high-level asks for transformation, support, or resource to unblock bottlenecks that would be taken forward beyond the conference. The specific objectives being, first, to connect with new knowledge and knowledge exchange with peers. Secondly, to identify specific interventions to apply or request in order to make progress in countries. And thirdly, to prioritize country actions to be taken forward after the Africa Sun 6 conference. In terms of challenging commitments, of course, the country dialogues concentrated on 4 of the INGO commitments on sanitation and hygiene. These commitments were selected based on either the least performing INGO monitoring results, simply because they are either key drivers to improve sanitation and hygiene coverage. The 4 commitments are listed as follows. Commitment number 3, which is to establish and track sanitation and hygiene budget lines that consistently increase annually to reach a minimum of 0.5% as a percentage of GDP by 2020. Commitment 5 is to develop and fund strategies to bridge the sanitation and hygiene human resource capacity gap at all levels. Commitment number 7 is to progressively eliminate untreated waste and encourage its productive use. And commitment number 8 is to enable and engage the private sector in developing innovative sanitation and hygiene products and services, especially for the marginalized and unserved. Now, in terms of country priorities and key asks to the high-level ministerial dialogue, the participating members noted that while the INGO commitment on sanitation and hygiene have already made some significant progress, the following areas are key priorities in order to secure progress towards the INGO vision. The first key priority area here is the strong institutional frameworks and policy instruments. This is to say that as African countries, we need to develop more effective policies and strategies that are integrated in national development plans, the NDPs. And secondly, we need to ensure an appropriate and adequate institutional and regulatory framework for the sanitation and hygiene sector. And thirdly, we need to involve regional blocks and research institutions in driving policy change and scaling up of capacity at the national level to drive accelerated action on sanitation and hygiene. The second key priority area is regards the financial resource allocation and budget tracking. which is very important. Here we are saying that we should increase, member states should increase budgetary allocation on hygiene and sanitation funding to 0.5% of the national gross domestic product GDP, and to disaggregate and prioritize hygiene budgets and develop a detailed roadmap with the specific indicators to monitor hygiene progress at all levels, and as well as to promote and facilitate ring fencing, financing, and strategic investment by the private sector and development partners on hygiene and sanitation, which is critical for accelerated actions. The third priority area here is better data for decision making. As you know that without data, you may not be able to come up with different scenarios and make informed decisions, where we need to establish systems to monitor and track untreated waste and mobilize resources to develop infrastructures to eliminate untreated waste and encourage its productive use. And also to establish and strengthen monitoring, evaluation, and reporting system on real-time data availability and collection for evidence-based planning and development, and also to support data disaggregation of gender, youth, and persons with disabilities in annual national household surveys on hygiene and sanitation, and promote activities to engage these groups to contribute to planning and access to sanitation and hygiene development. The other priority area is regards with the research and knowledge, where we are saying that we should support mapping of human resource capacity and promote investment in capacity development to unlock sanitation and hygiene climate change adaptation funds at all levels, to explore more opportunities for the entire sanitation and hygiene value chain, and prioritization of infrastructure for development. And the last one being to prioritize the appropriation of technologies and innovation for addressing sanitation and hygiene bottlenecks that are critical in the sector. Moderator, allow me to thank the conveners of these sessions and all the presenters that gave us some presentations. It was a mouthful and we really enjoyed the sessions. Thank you very much.
And thank you to Mr. TAC Chair for the presentation. And thank you to everyone for taking us through the reports of the sub-themes and the country dialogue. We told you during the opening plenary that we work closely with some key partners. Some of them were able to give their goodwill messages during the opening plenary. Today, we'll take goodwill messages from some of our partners. To start us off, we will go to the African Development Bank and hear the goodwill message from Mr. Oswald Chanda, the director.
And congratulate AMCA and the African Union and the government of Namibia for such great success. During the discussions this week, we heard good things were happening. There is a lot of good knowledge and initiatives that we can scale up. However, the challenges facing us, the gaps that we have to fill are enormous. However, this remains the fertile ground for innovation and creativity. Let's consider how to convert the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change challenges into opportunities to think of solutions and bring about the change we so desire. Here are some takeaways that could help us reach the 740 million without proper sanitation, the 300 million without safe water, and the 380,000 children dying every day from unsafe water-related diarrhea cases. 1, plan and use the resources in hand efficiently. Create an environment that promotes participation, innovation, and creativity. 3, leverage climate financing. And 4, increase the uptake of technology. To face these challenges, we need to synergize to realize the SDG targets. Partnerships is at the core of success, and it is for this reason that I am excited by the proposal to establish a water sector donor coordination framework under the AMCAO umbrella. The Africa Development Bank stands ready to join hands to face these challenges and work towards achieving global and continental targets on water and sanitation. You can count on us, your premier partner for water and sanitation development in Africa. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention.
Thanks to Mr. Chanda for those remarks. And next, ladies and gentlemen, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been a key partner of AMCAO for many, many years. Together, AMCAO has worked on many initiatives. Recently, we developed and launched the Africa Sanitation Policy Guidelines with strong support and collaboration of the Gates Foundation. As we continue with this strong partnership and collaboration towards improving water, sanitation, and hygiene in Africa, please join me to welcome Dr. Dulai Kone, Deputy Director of Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene at the Foundation. Dr. Dulai is joining us via video message.
Colonel Korea, African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment. Honorable Suleiman Adamu, Minister of Water Resources, Federal Republic of Nigeria. AMCAO Vice President for West Africa. Distinguished Ministers, AMCAO Executive Secretary, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you on behalf of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for inviting us to be part of this important conference. I want to thank our host of the 8th Africa Water Week and the 6th Africa Sun Conference, the Secretariat of AMCAO, together with the African Union Commission and the government of the Republic of Namibia. We appreciate AMCAO's leadership in strengthening the enabling environment for sanitation among AMCAO's member states, and in particular, the very successful development, adoption, and launch of the Africa Sanitation Policy Guideline. We have taken note of the significant demand from many countries. We congratulate the government of Kenya for leading the way in creating the first sanitation management policy using the ASPG. We have begun discussion to renew the partnership with AMCAO to support the coordination of countries that would like to adopt the ASPG at the national level. We have only 9 years left to meet the SDG 6 goal. Achieving this goal demands that we find new ways of working together that reflect this urgency. We will look up to countries to lead from the front and own the ambition contained in the SDG so that we can deliver safely managed sanitation to our people. The data gap continues to be a challenge 6 years into the SDG. Countries must be the epicenter of data collection in order to assess how much progress is being made and how fast. This is critical to advance policy dialogue, monitoring, and accountability. We are proud to partner with AMCAO to execute your mandate as policy and political platform for the wash sector. We believe that a strong AMCAO that can represent the vision of AMCAO member state is a win for the wash sector at large. We look forward to coming together and deeply engaging at the World Water Forum in Dakar in March. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kone, for those remarks.
The Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency is another very important partner of AMCAO. We will now invite Mr. Thomas Anderson, who will deliver the goodwill remarks of SIDA. Over to you, Mr. Anderson.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, I'm very pleased to address you at this closing session at the African and Water and Sanitation Week. As we all know, water is important for life, both for human beings and for the environment. We also know that it's a scarce resource, which is very demanding to manage in a good way. These issues has been discussed during this week. And one way to address the thing is to have an open and transparent discussion about these issues and share knowledge between each other to have good exchanges and learn. I think this week has addressed those issues very, very well, and it's good to see the commitments among the participants when engaging with each other. As I said, it's very demanding, and it's not less demanding adding the climate issues on this. But this week and this kind of events gives hope that we actually will manage and have some way forward. As representing SIDA, one of the contributors to AMCAO, I'm very pleased to see that this week has been conducted in a very good way. And I thank you all for participating and hope to see you in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for those words. We started with the roadmap of the 9th World Water Forum. We will now receive the recap of this big event happening in a few months. Let's welcome the Executive Secretary of the 9th World Water Forum, Ambassador Abdoulaye Sen. Ambassador, over to you. So the ambassador is not online yet. Let's go to next.
Thank you, Maimouna. Throughout the week, we've been sharing experiences through the dialogues.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, it seems we have Ambassador Sen, so over to you. Vous avez la parole, Excellence.
Merci, merci, et je m'excuse effectivement pour ces quelques secondes que j'ai perdues à l'entame. Donc, j'ai eu l'honneur donc de participer à cette rencontre au nom de M. Abdoulaye Sen, secrétaire exécutif du 9e Forum mondial, qui aurait bien voulu effectivement être parmi vous, mais empêché, il m'a demandé de venir donc le représenter à cette cérémonie de clôture. Et à l'entame, je commencerai par exprimer mes salutations à Monsieur le ministre en charge de l'eau et de l'assainissement de Namibie, Monsieur le secrétaire exécutif de l'AMCAO, à Monsieur le représentant de la Commission de l'Union africaine et à tous les participants à cette cérémonie. Vous comprendrez que donc mon rôle sera de vous livrer le message de Monsieur le secrétaire exécutif, Monsieur Abdoulaye Sen, comme je l'ai dit, qui aurait dû être là avec vous, mais qui m'a chargé donc de vous livrer ce message. Je le cite. Permettez-moi avant tout de renouveler mes salutations et mes remerciements à AMCAO, à la Commission de l'Union africaine et à la République de Namibie de nous avoir associés à l'organisation de la Semaine africaine de l'eau et de l'assainissement et pour la haute attention accordée au processus préparatoire du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau Dakar 2022. Nous voilà arrivés au terme des 5 jours d'échange d'une grande richesse qui, nous pouvons l'affirmer, ont tenu leurs promesses et fait de cette semaine un temps de plaidoyer fort pour l'accès universel aux services d'eau et d'assainissement sécurisés en Afrique. Nous félicitons les organisateurs et l'ensemble des participants d'avoir ainsi apporté une réelle contribution à la formulation des réponses globaux sur le thème de la sécurité de l'eau pour la santé publique et le développement humain. Ces réponses contribueront sans nul doute à animer les débats lors de la semaine du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau, dont le thème « La sécurité de l'eau pour la paix et le développement » entre en droite ligne avec les préoccupations de la semaine africaine de l'eau et de l'assainissement. Les présentations de grande qualité qui nous ont été proposées et les expériences couronnées de succès qui ont été partagées ont dessiné de manière convergente et pertinente la direction dans laquelle nous devons aller tous ensemble pour accélérer la mise en œuvre globale des objectifs de développement durable et plus particulièrement de l'ODD 6 en Afrique. Elles ont aussi montré le chemin qui reste encore à parcourir en préconisant de fédérer au mieux nos efforts afin d'assurer une sécurité de l'eau et de l'assainissement et permettre un développement durable qui ne laisse personne en rade. Lors de cette semaine, et nous l'avons vu, nous l'avons également senti chez l'ensemble des parties prenantes, une véritable volonté de relever ensemble les défis qui nous attendent. L'importance d'une action coordonnée pour relever les défis majeurs, dont ceux qui composent les 4 priorités définies par le 9e Forum mondial de l'eau, à savoir la sécurité de l'eau et de l'assainissement, l'eau pour le développement rural, la coopération et outils et moyens, est une exigence incontournable pour atteindre la sécurité de l'eau dans le monde et plus particulièrement en Afrique. Mesdames, Messieurs, je me réjouis de la mobilisation des acteurs africains et du monde lors de cette semaine dédiée aux questions cruciales du secteur de l'eau et de l'assainissement, en considérant cet événement comme une étape importante sur la route du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau. Nous appelons les acteurs à maintenir cette mobilisation, à cet engagement en direction de Dakar 2022. Je ne saurais conclure sans renouveler mes chaleureuses félicitations à AMCAO et à la Commission de l'Union africaine pour l'exemplarité de leur engagement aux côtés du Sénégal. Votre forte présence à nos côtés sur le chemin de Dakar 2022 nous permettra d'assurer une contribution significative de l'Afrique dans l'agenda international de l'eau, en vue notamment d'assurer la sécurité de l'eau pour la paix et le développement partout et pour tous. Tous ensemble pour la réussite donc du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau, auquel justement je vous invite en mars 2022 à Dakar. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. We look forward to the World Water Forum in Senegal in 2022.
And ladies and gentlemen, throughout the week, we've been sharing experiences through the dialogues, the plenary sessions, and many technical sessions. After all the sessions and the interactions of the week, the different stakeholders have agreed on some key actions to take forward to improve water and sanitation across the continent. The resolutions of the stakeholders were deliberated upon and endorsed by ministers and representatives of governments and member states of the African Union yesterday, 25th of November, 2021. And here to read the resolutions which are called the Windhoek multi-stakeholder resolutions for accelerating water security and for access to safely managed sanitation and hygiene in Africa, is the Executive Secretary of AMCAO, Dr. Rashid Mbazira. Over to you, ES.
Many thanks, moderator. I thank all the participants that are with us as we conclude our Africa Water and Sanitation Week. Allow me, as been announced, to read to you the resolutions of the Windhoek multi-stakeholder resolutions for accelerating water security and access to safely managed sanitation and hygiene in Africa. done at the Africa Water and Sanitation Week of November 22 to 26, 2021, convened virtually by the African Ministers' Council on Water and the African Union Commission, and hosted by the government of the Republic of Namibia. The preamble. Emerging from the deliberations during the Africa Water and Sanitation Week Conference 2021, which combined the 8th Africa Water Week and the 6th Africa Sun Conference, reiterating the centrality of water in the survival and sustainability for all forms of life on the planet, and appreciating that strengthening water security and sustainable sanitation is a prerequisite for inclusive socioeconomic development. Taking due consideration of the enormous political commitment to actualize the Africa Water Vision through such ministerial and heads of state and government declarations as the ministerial commitments of the 2003 Pan-African Implementation and Partnership Conference, Pan-AFCON, on water, the 2004 CIRT Declaration on Integrated Development of Agriculture and Water in Africa, the 2008 Itiquini Declaration and Africa Sun Action Plan, the 2008 Tunis Ministerial Declaration on Accelerating Water Security for Africa's Socioeconomic Development, the 2008 Accra Agenda for Action to accelerate progress towards the Paris Declaration objectives, the 2008 Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration for accelerating the achievement of water and sanitation goals, the 2009 Johannesburg Ministerial Statement adopting the roadmap for the implementation of the Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration, the AMCAO policy and strategy for mainstreaming gender in the water sector in Africa, the 2014 Kigali Action Plan on fast-tracking implementation of the July 2008 Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration, the 2015 Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing for Sustainable Development, the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, particularly SDG 6, on ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all, the 2016 Dar es Salaam Roadmap for achieving the Ngor commitments on water security, sanitation in Africa, and the 2021 AMCAO Governing Council Decision, GA/TRO/2021 Windhoek/1 on the African Sanitation Policy Guidelines. Noting that Africa has now reached the point where there needs to be greater convergence between the high-level commitments and delivery through A, concrete and unambiguous actions, B, strengthening and scaling up of existing mechanisms and initiatives, and C, refinement of strategies and to address the challenges faced in safely managing water and related resources, as well as assuring accessibility, reliability, affordability of water supply, sanitation, and hygiene services provision for all. Further noting that the Africa Water Vision 2025 will end within the next 3 years, highlighting the necessity to evaluate the extent to which the Africa Water Vision 2025 targets have been achieved by the member states as a first step to transitioning to the post-2025 era. Cognizant of the urgent need to raise the profile and value attached to water in national systems for economic planning and development, and thus increase domestic allocations and investment into the water, sanitation, and hygiene subsectors. The investment requirement to make the Africa Water Vision a reality is indicated as at least $50 billion per annum for the 20 years since 2019. Current financial flows for the sector are reported as 13 billion per annum, indicating a significant funding gap of about 75%. Additionally, cognizant of the vitality of improving water availability to strengthen Africa's response to COVID-19 and future pandemics, restore economic growth, and build resilience to climate, health, and food system shocks. Informed by the need to create employment opportunities for the youth and develop their technical and skills capacities to contribute to sustainable services delivery across the continent. Recognizing the need to improve efficiency and efficacy of utilizing available public resources, as well as expanding funding and investment opportunities by attracting the private sector. The vision. Remaining committed to the Africa Water Vision 2025 and the SDGs, we, the stakeholders at the Africa Water and Sanitation Week 2021, renew our commitment to make progress on water security, sanitation, and hygiene within the framework of the Africa Union Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, by improving efficiency, transparency, accountability in addressing inequalities, and equally improving sector funding within the functions of water resources management and water supply, sanitation, and hygiene services provision. A key element of this is to integrate the agenda for water, sanitation, and hygiene and climate action. B, strengthening and institutionalizing monitoring, evaluation, and reporting mechanisms that support evidence-based decision-making. C, formulating the post-2025 Africa Water Vision in alignment with the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and the Africa Union Agenda 2063 towards a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. C, we resolve to undertake the following actions. Under water governance and on policy, legal, and institutional environments, to strengthen policy, legal, and institutional environments by ensuring context specificity, intra and intersectoral coherence, and upholding of the principles of universal social inclusion and equity. Call on governments to formulate and implement inclusive sanitation policies that cover sewered and non-sewered sanitation systems as the foundation for delivering safely managed sanitation. Ensure availability of commensurate material, financial, and human resources to national and local government institutional mechanisms for water resources management and delivery of water, sanitation, and hygiene services to all. Special emphasis should be placed on ensuring high-level political leadership to motivate action on sanitation and hygiene. Under the sub-theme on stakeholder engagement, enjoin governments to raise the profile of social accountability and transparency. It's vital to recognize women and youth as change agents for planning and implementation of the water, sanitation, and hygiene agenda in Africa. We call on governments to assure sustainable services delivery by developing the requisite human resources capacity, especially among women, girls, people with disabilities, and marginalized communities. On finance, we call on governments and the private sector to significantly increase investment in climate resilient and inclusive water and sanitation infrastructure. The continued support of development banks and partners will be a critical enabler. We call on governments to recommit to both the 2003 Pan-African commitment to allocate at least 5% of national budgets for water and sanitation, for the water and sanitation sector, and B, the Itequini commitments to establish public sector budget allocations of a minimum of 0.5 of GDP per annum for sanitation and hygiene programs. Under finance again, we encourage governments to leverage climate funds to support national development strategies under the climate management systems. On sanitation and hygiene services, we call on governments to seize the opportunity of fighting the COVID-19 pandemic to raise the profile of sanitation and hygiene and strengthen pandemic preparedness and response capabilities. We call on governments and stakeholders to address the challenges faced to access reliable and complete data in the water and sanitation sector, especially on hygiene. There is a need to rethink how data on hygiene practices is captured and utilized to inform decision-making and improve sanitation and hygiene programming and services delivery. On water supply for growth and economic development, we call on governments to ensure water availability to keep up the fight against COVID-19, bring down the overall disease burden, and prevent future pandemics. We encourage governments and relevant partners to prioritize water management and services provision as essential ingredients for poverty alleviation and inclusive socioeconomic development. To prioritize groundwater resources management as a key element of water resources development, utilization, and management. Well-functioning monitoring, assessment, and management systems are required to ensure sustainable use of groundwater resources. To mobilize groundwater networks, actors, and institutions towards a common, harmonized, and evidence-based approach to sustainable groundwater use and management in furtherance of the Africa Water Vision and Africa Union Agenda 2063. Under the sub-theme on water quality and wastewater management, to strengthen legal, policy, and institutional frameworks for the collection and treatment of waste, both solid waste and wastewater, to a minimum quality standard before reuse or safe disposal. to incentivize the private sector to play an active role in enhancing the use of wastewater and sludge as appropriate and acceptable in agriculture and other sectors. To standardize regulations for wastewater treatment, environmental flows, and water quality management in Africa, with particular reference to arresting and reversing plastic pollution of surface water bodies and preventing groundwater contamination due to unsafe solid waste and wastewater disposal to the environment. On climate change and resilience, we call attention to the recently published IPCC 6 assessment report of 2021 and the relevant priorities of the Glasgow Climate Pact, including integrating water and climate action through adaptation and resilience planning at national and regional levels, promoting and financing global water monitoring systems to provide timely information and about current and future water availability, promoting a proactive approach to flood and drought management centered around the pillars of monitoring, forecasting, and early warning vulnerability, and impact assessment and preparedness, mitigation, and response. Monitoring, learning, knowledge management, and capacity. Prioritize investment for monitoring, evaluation, knowledge, and information management and learning to consolidate evidence-based and timely decision-making at all levels. Encourage African governments to foster research and application of knowledge and innovations to inform sector interventions targeted at improving water management and water and sanitation services provision. Done on the 26th day of November 2021, as resolutions from the inaugural Africa Water and Sanitation Week 2021, signed for the AMCAO Governing Council by Honorable Karl Hermann Gustav Schlettwin, Minister for Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, Republic of Namibia, and President of the AMCAO Governing Council. Thank you very much. And I've been informed that the Honorable Minister of Water from the Republic of Ghana is online. Just to acknowledge his presence to continue with this. Back to you to the studio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Executive Secretary.
As they say, every good thing must come to an end. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to come to the end of a very exciting week. To officially close the Africa Water Sanitation Week, we invite Honorable Amidou Ishaku, the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, Ghana, to give his remarks.
Thank you very much. But before I give my remarks, let me indicate that I'm the Deputy Minister for Water and Sanitation, representing my minister on this very important platform. Your Excellency Fatima Mada Biu, the First Lady of Sierra Leone, Your Excellency Amina Mohammed, the UN Deputy Secretary General, Your Excellency Yusfa Leona Kari Saku, Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture of the African Union Commission, Honorable Karl Hermann Gustav, the AMCO President and Minister for Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, Republic of Namibia, Honorable Ministers and members of the AMCO Governing Council, Your Excellency Gilbert Hugo, Chair of UN Water and President of IFAD, Your Excellency Dr. Bev Dunford, Vice President, Agriculture, Human and Social Development of the African Development Bank, Your Excellency Ambassador Abdoulaye Seni, the Executive Secretary of the 9th World Water Forum Secretariat, Delegate the Africa Water and Sanitation Week. I am informed that this is the first time that the Africa Water Week has been combined with the Africa Sun Conference. It is also the first time that the event was held virtually. I am happy that the conference is a success, and for that matter, we thank the organizers, the African Ministers' Council on Water, the African Union Commission, and the host country, the Republic of Namibia, for the political leadership given to this conference. I thank the conveners and all our participants for the success of the conference. The outcome of the conference, the Windhoek multi-stakeholder resolutions for accelerating water security and access to safely managed sanitation and hygiene in Africa, will help to provide water, sanitation, and hygiene to the people in more efficient and effective ways. I look forward to bringing this document to AU heads of state and government during their special summit on water on the margins of the 9th World Water Forum in Dakar in 2022. I therefore call on member states to not only add these recommendations into their national policies on water, sanitation, and hygiene, but also to take concrete actions to implement the resolutions. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, the AMCOS Secretariat is hosted in Abuja and supported by the government of Nigeria. So on this note, kindly permit me to call on the Honorable Suleiman Hussein Adamu, Minister for Water Resources, Federal Republic of Nigeria, and AMCOS Vice President for West Africa, to give vote of thanks for this important occasion. Thank you very much for your audience.
Honorable Minister, I think we are, Honorable Adamu traveled, and we were expecting to have connected by now, but there seems to be a challenge technically. So permit me to read his speech before you finalize you conclude this session, unless the technical team informs me that he's online. Studio, is Honorable Adamu online?
Not yet.
Okay, I'll permit me to read his speech, which was sent to us ahead just in anticipation of a challenge of this nature. I'll read his speech verbatim. Statement of, okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Amidou Isahaku Shinia of the Republic of Ghana, for those remarks that have summarized the deliberations of the conference and what has been achieved. Honorable ministers and members of the AMCAO Governing Council, delegated representatives of AU member states, representatives of our funding, technical and implementing partners, members of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm greatly honored to address this closing plenary of the Africa Water and Sanitation Week 2021. It is my singular honor to deliver the gratitude of the water community in Africa for the work, efforts, and support that have gone into successfully convening AMCAO's first ever joint conference of the Africa Water Week and Africa Sun platforms. The enormity of this achievement is contextualized by the fact that the conference has been our first virtual event of this magnitude. We owe a great deal first to the nearly 2,000 participants. I think that figure has been updated to 3,000 by the studio, that have actively engaged in the dialogue processes, knowledge and information sharing, formulation of solutions, and agenda setting over the last 5 days. Second, to the 14 lead conveners of the 9 sub-themes of the conference and the 8-9 session conveners that have coordinated our interactions during this week. They've been instrumental in collecting the messages from the participants into the amplified collective Windhoek multi-stakeholder resolutions for accelerating water security and access to safely managed sanitation and hygiene in Africa. Third, to our funding and implementing partners, most of whom have also doubled as conference sponsors and session conveners. AMCAO's ambit covers all matters related to water and sanitation in all AU member states. This conference has provided the platform to deliberate member states' progress towards achieving water and sanitation goals in Africa. Those efforts have benefited from the invaluable support of AMCAO's funding, development, and private sector partners, all of whom I cannot list here exhaustively. Suffice it to say that your individual financial and in-kind contributions are recognized and appreciated. Distinguished guests, a key element of the outcomes of this conference are recommendations on addressing the domestic funding challenges that the sector faces. With your continued support, we reiterate our commitment to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of utilizing the investments into the sector to deepen and broaden our impact. In the same token, AMCAO is indebted to our technical and implementing partners. Continental policy initiatives are only as impactful as they are translated into action plans at national level. Our technical and implementing partners bridge that divide. And as has been observed during the conference, feedback from their activities also informs continental policy direction. Ladies and gentlemen, we also acknowledge the contributions of the service providers. From Abuja, my message is being made available to participants in different parts of the world in both English and French. This is made possible by the numerous members of the service support teams that have worked tirelessly with the Secretariat to realize this conference. This extends to the members of the media and press corps. They have not only shone the light on the conference, but have also carried its message to the wider audience beyond the active participants. In conclusion, allow me to express our special thanks to the member states for the financial, material, and above all, information support to convene this inaugural Africa Water and Sanitation Week. Our conference hosts, the Republic of Namibia, have provided leadership and guidance for which we are heartily grateful. On this note, and on behalf, well, the statement, he was going to close at this point, but I'll hand over back to Honorable Isahaku to do us the honors of closing the conference. Thank you very much. And please accept the Honorable Minister's apologies for not being able to connect on time.
Thank you very much. Once again, let me repeat that we appreciate the participation by all participants. And let me also remind all member countries that it is important that once these resolutions have been passed, we incorporate them into our national planning so that it can take effect in earnest, and to see how we can ensure that the goals are set out in the resolutions are met. Once again, let me thank all of you for your participation, and especially the AMCO Secretariat for putting together this conference. We are so grateful and urge you to continue to work hard so that issues of water and sanitation and hygiene are tackled seriously, because we all believe that once issues of sanitation, water, and hygiene are properly tackled, it will go a long way to affect other sectors of the economy. For instance, the number of people who visit the hospital on a daily basis, if you look at the sicknesses that they take to the OPD, most of them are related to water, sanitation, and hygiene. So what it means is that if we are able to provide quality water to our people, we're able to keep our environment clean, we're able to practice personal and environmental hygiene, we are going to drastically reduce sicknesses in the hospitals, and government to reduce expenditure in the health sector, and also increase the efficiency and effectiveness of people in their workplaces, because once you don't fall sick, you'll be strong enough to be at workplace and productivity will be increased. So I urge member countries to ensure that these resolutions that have been passed are incorporated into your national plans and effected, so that eventually we can achieve the objectives set out in them. In fact, it is my belief that issues of sanitation, water, and hygiene are fundamental human rights. And once we ensure that these things are taken care of, it will solve a lot of other related problems relating to other ministries and other sectors of our economy. So let's take these resolutions very seriously. And I'm confident that our member states will be will have a different narrative in the nearest possible time once these resolutions are properly incorporated into our national plans and implemented effectively. Thank you very much. And on this note, I want to declare this conference closed. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Your Excellencies.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the week. We thank you all for making this conference a very successful one. We look forward to meeting you and interacting with you at the World Water Forum and at the Heads of State Water and Sanitation Summit in Dakar in March 2022.
Thank you so much. You can access the recording of all the sessions on the Africa Water and Sanitation Week platform. And let's keep the conversations going on social media. And remember to tag us.
Until we meet again soon, thank you for joining us at the Africa Water and Sanitation Week 2021. Have a great weekend and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.